And I would like to ask you, Claudia, to start with. We are both trainees, late stage trainees at the Institute of Psychosynthesis. And one of the questions I'm asked a lot is why therapy? What does therapy do to you? And why could or should someone choose the therapy instead of or as well as a particular spiritual path or other ways of healing?
I'm not particularly kind of rigid in thinking that therapy is the answer to all. So I think that therapy has replaced a lot of other support that we had in the past. One, for example, was going to confession. Nobody does it any longer in the West. Also, we inherit some of the traits of maybe medicine, men or women, shamans, individuals in communities that were of more guiding roles that, since we don't have communities any longer. So I don't think that is the only way, but of course it's a very effective way in terms of guiding and supporting individuals that are finding life difficult in some ways, but also that are curious about existential issues, philosophical issues, life in general, relationships. And part of the reason why therapy is effective is because of what we know now is mirror neurons. So it's a very basic way of regulating the nervous system with the presence of another that actually is very well known in spiritual paths. Sitting at the feet of the master only often in itself is re-regulating. I don't know if you have ever had the experience of sitting in the presence of someone that has a spiritual depth, what you would call spiritual teacher. I don't know if that's a bit of an abused word, but I remember when I first met one of mine that I went there with a very dysregulated mind, overthinking and with the 2 billion questions. And when I sat literally at his presence, my mind, that kind of dysregulated mind disappeared, and I sat in peace of being. So I'm not comparing therapists to that level, but somehow, hopefully, through personal work, personal therapy, group work, study, the therapist might have the capacity also to have a being, a presence that in itself can be self-regulating, together with tools, the tools of knowledge, of psychosynthesis, working with personalities, and so on, that helps the individual to extend and expand what in neuroscience you would call the window of tolerance. So there's a basic. But again, there are many ways in which therapy can be helpful. One of which I think is also the existential challenge that we all face. So yes, but I think there is a beautiful story of Jung that was working with a Jewish client, and after a few sessions, he realized that therapy for her was totally unhelpful, and he sent her back to the Jewish community and the synagogue. That was her therapy.
It's so interesting what you're saying, because I have had some experiences like that, being around people who are very well regulated energetically. And I've also been wired up to an EEG machine at certain times in my life when I've been near these people, and you see that you're actually absorbing that energy from them, and you're synchronizing with their energy. And very often they're exhibiting, as you're probably well aware, that these sort of alpha theta type waves. And you are just being brought into the same pattern as them. And yes, what you were saying, it could be like a master or someone who can do that. But as therapists as well, I always think if you are like grounded and you've made a sort of a conscious awareness before the session starts, just to slow things down, then your client is actually connecting with that energy at the same time. So it's like a mini version of sitting with a master, but not quite so grandiose. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting what you said there.
That's why I think in transpersonal psychosynthesis is one of those. In transpersonal psychotherapies, Assagioli was a promoter of having your own spiritual practice, because your level of being will have a deep impact regardless of the tools, the techniques, or the kind of the knowledge you have will have a big impact on the client. So that's I think that's very relevant. Of course, knowledge also, using your rational mind and empathy also will have an impact. So the capacity of the therapist to be empathic will in itself regulate the dynamic with the client. But this, having a spiritual path practice, I find fundamental. In fact, I teach principle and practice of meditation. And I hope that the students come out of the teaching understanding that it's much more relevant for them as practitioners to do meditation than doing it to their clients. Of course, it's very important to help clients to do meditation, but how you are meditating, how much you're meditating is more relevant.